Hello there. It's your girl Valerie Mason Chase, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Marriage Beyond the Breach podcast. And listen, Marriage Beyond the Breach is a place where I believe, that no marriage is beyond redemption. However, there's a caveat. When the partners are willing to commit to each other, commit to the relationship, and commit to doing the work. And when those things are in place, I honestly do believe that there's no marriage that is beyond redemption. So today we're going to be talking about a topic, hey sis, that is a little tender, but it's a necessary conversation. And today we're going to be talking about, hey Jono, oh, go Knicks, yeah baby. We're going to be talking about grieving the relationship you thought you'd have. Because very often we enter into relationships, long term relationships or marriages, with an idea of what we would like for our marriage to be, or an idea of what we hope for it to be. So many people who are married, they're committed, they're showing up, you're doing life together, but privately, there may be some grief going on. You could be grieving the closeness that you expected, the romance that you hoped would last, the partnership that you imagined, the emotional safety that you desired, or the version of marriage that you thought you were building. So today we're going to talk about unmet expectations, emotional disappointment, resentment, acceptance, repair, and the sacred work of deciding what can still be rebuilt. So let's jump right in and talk about it. And tonight, you got only a girl, Valerie Mason Chase. I'm here by myself tonight. I don't have the cookie man. I don't have my number one guest, Dr. Danita Thompson. So what I want to encourage those of you who are listening, especially live. Uh-oh, something happened. Um, to put comments in the chat. Did you have a relationship where you had certain expectations or you had a vision of what you wanted that marriage to be and it didn't quite turn out to be that way? What's been your experience? So, what does it mean to grieve the relationship that you thought you'd have? To do that, to grieve the relationship that you thought you had means that you're acknowledging sadness, you're acknowledging disappointment and loss connected to the marriage that you imagined but you were not experiencing. And sometimes it may be that you are not experiencing it at all, or it could be that you're not experiencing it at the same level that you had hoped for. And this is a grief of realizing that love, commitment, or time together didn't automatically create emotional closeness, partnership, romance, or the safety that you hoped for, because it doesn't happen automatically. I believe it can happen, and it does happen when there is a great deal of intentionality. So that's what it means to grieve a relationship that you thought that you would have. And this particular type of grief, it's difficult to recognize, and sometimes it's difficult to admit. So, what makes it challenging to admit and acknowledge this type of grief? Um, Sometimes it's because people minimize it because, listen, the marriage is still intact. You're still there with the person. You're still doing life together. You're still laying down in bed together every night. You're still waking up beside each other every morning. And so sometimes when that's happening, even though there is a sadness that's being experienced, the individual may try to convince themselves that they shouldn't be sad. And, it's never a matter of what you should or should not feel. It's a matter of what you were actually feeling and how you are going to now handle these feelings that come up once you have acknowledged them, because I think it's important to acknowledge them. And I also think that it's important to know how to tell the difference between normal marital disappointment and a deeper relational grief. And I say normal marital disappointment because let's face it, if you're married longer than a minute and a half, your partner is going to disappoint you at some point in time. Your partner is not always going to do and be and show up exactly as you would like for them to. So, if you're in a long term relationship, there's going to be some disappointment, but there is a difference between that normal disappointment and that relational grief that is a lot deeper because the normal disappointment that comes and goes. You may experience it for a time and then it's gone, but not grief. Grief will linger and it has an impact on your ability to hope, to trust. It can impact your emotional availability, and it can even impact your desire for connection. So, when these things are going on, it's more than just the normal marital disappointment that everyone in a long term relationship is going to experience at some point in time because your partner is not always going to do everything exactly the way you would hope for or the way that you would want them to. So, what happens emotionally when someone, and these are my words, keeps pretending that they're not disappointed? Because sometimes we can have that conversation with ourselves and say, "Oh, well, you don't want to experience that level of disappointment in your relationship or in your marriage, but when you try to kind of stuff it away or push it away and pretend as if you are not experiencing what you are experiencing or that you are not really feeling what you were feeling, you can become emotionally numb sometimes, and there is a high probability that you're going to become critical, maybe even hypercritical. You could become withdrawn, and there also can be a hyper focus on every single thing that your spouse is not doing. You kind of lose sight of what they are doing because you're so hyper focused on what they're not doing because it's what they're not doing that is leading to the grief that you're experiencing in terms of the relationship or marriage not being what you had anticipated. And Jackie said you have to know what you want before you enter into the relationship. Sometimes one's expectations are not realistic with the person you're in a relationship with. Hallelujah. Amen. Say it again. That is so, so true, Jackie. You have to know what you want before even entering into a relationship. And I'm sorry to say, not everybody does. Not everybody knows what they want. Not everybody knows what it is they're looking for. Not everybody has an idea of what they want their marriage or long-term relationship to be. And Jackie's right. You can become critical of yourself. You absolutely can, because then you start questioning, well, my God, did I marry the right person? Or is this the wrong person? Or is this really my person? That's a phrase that's used a lot nowadays. And you can become critical of yourself. And Jackie also brought up about resentment. And we're going to talk about that in greater detail in a few minutes, but you are absolutely right. Um, and to talk about unmet expectations, are they always unfair or can they really reveal a legitimate need? Because let's face it, some expectations from my perspective are absolutely, absolutely unrealistic based on several things, one of which is the person that you are married to. Listen, you gotta know who the person is that you are with. And okay, I'm going to use that C word again about capacity, but you got to know who this person is. Did you and this individual really get to know one another? Take the time to get to know one another before you embarked on a marriage. Because let's face it, if you meet someone and you marry quickly, you probably don't know them well enough. You probably don't know or have all of the information that you need in order to make an informed decision when it comes to marriage. I'm a strong believer, because in healthcare, we talk about informed consent all the time. And I believe that um, in order to have the healthiest marriage possible, it helps to make an informed decision. And you do that by really getting to know this individual that you're in a relationship with. If you meet someone in February and y'all marry in March or April, how well do you really know this person? And if you I think it's unfair to have certain expectations of a partner that you really don't know. It's just unfair because you don't know if they have the mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological capacity and wherewithal to meet those needs, whatever those needs might be. But some expectations are unrealistic. And I'm just going to talk about a few that I believe are unrealistic across the board. And one is when we say, my spouse should know what I need without me having to say it. I know y'all have heard me say that before. I believe that is an unrealistic expectation because love does not eliminate the need for clear communication. It does not eliminate the need for that. I don't care how much your partner loves you. There still needs to be that open and clear communication. Something else that I believe is an unrealistic expectation when someone says, if we were truly connected, we should rarely have conflict or we would never have conflict. That's unrealistic. Every couple, every couple has conflict. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this with my whole chest. If a couple is in a long term relationship and there is never any conflict, I will put my head on the chopping block that one of those individuals, either their needs aren't being met or they're staying quiet about those needs. Because it's impossible to be in that close of a relationship with someone that you are in a marriage and there never be any conflict. There's got to be because you're not always going to agree. There are going to be times when you disagree. And conflict, I think, can be a healthy thing because it provides opportunity for more conversation. And it isn't that you don't want to have conflict. What really matters is what makes the difference is how do you manage the conflict and how especially do you repair after the conflict. Those two things matter more than whether or not you are actually having a conflict. And Jackie said, when you know them long enough, you might think that when you know them long enough, yeah, you might think that you can change them. And let's face it, ladies, sometimes we do that. We enter into a relationship with this build-a-bear mentality, and we think that this person's going to change because if they loved us, they would. That's not going to happen. We cannot change anyone. Any other human other than yourself is outside of your circle of control. The only person that we can control is ourselves. Everybody else, they're outside of that circle. So, no, we cannot change anyone. So, Listen, what you see is what you get. You could try to build a bear, and get somebody, and women, I think we do this more than men do. We want this build a bear man, where we think that we could, if we take this over here and put this together and put take this and put that together, then eventually it'll be a whole fully realized man. But it don't work like that. Just doesn't work like that. So I am not a proponent of build a bear relationship. Okay? Because what you see more often than not is what you get. One of the things I ask in counseling, when I am counseling a couple and they bring up certain challenges with their partner and certain things that they wish were different, my number one question is this: if it never changes, can you live with it for the rest of your life? That's the question. And honestly, that's a question that I believe should take place in premarital counseling, because what you see before you get married, not only will you see it after you say I do, but you will probably see more of it. So the question is, if it doesn't change, can you live with it for the rest of your life? Excuse me. Another of what I believe is an unrealistic expectation is when someone says, my spouse, my partner should always make me feel happy, secure, and fulfilled. No, 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 boo. Mm-mm. Our partner, our spouse can support our emotional well-being, but they cannot be held responsible for regulating all of our emotions, because there are times when we're going to be sad and it has nothing to do with our partner. And we sometimes we got to work through some of that stuff and not put the onus on our partner to make us happy and bring all of this joy into our life. That is a cherry on top of the cake. But the cake is you yourself and the internal joy that you are bringing into the relationship. When your partner makes you happy, that's a cherry on top. But if you didn't have that partner, would you still be happy? If you had no partner, would you still be happy? That's the question. When someone is in a space where, whether they had a partner or not, whether they have the partner they got or not, and they can say, listen, I am still fulfilled, I am happy, and I am a fully realized man or woman. That's a great space to be in, because you're not pining for this person or pining for a particular relationship. Now, listen, relationships are great. It's great to be in a relationship with someone that you love and someone that loves you, but not everyone is going to have that experience. And if you don't, can you live with it? That's the question. Another unrealistic expectation is expecting that your marriage should heal your childhood wounds. That is a huge no. That is a hell no. That is a no, 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 no. It ain't going to happen. Marriage not heal your childhood wounds, marriage will trigger them. Marriage will touch upon them. Marriage will bring them out. I I call marriage an emotional crucible. Okay. A crucible is that thing, it's a container that can withstand a lot of heat. They use it in chemistry and in labs and medicine and whatnot, putting chemicals inside of it. To the goal, I think, is kind of to purify the contents that's inside of the crucible, but it can withstand a lot of heat. That's exactly what marriage is. There's no place that will bring out more evidence of unhealed childhood wounds than a marriage. No other place will do it more than a marriage. So it's completely unrealistic to expect that your marriage alone will heal your childhood wounds. No, it'll reveal them, but it cannot replace marriage. Your partner cannot replace doing your own work, being on your own healing journey. That's a very, very, very personal thing. And each of us, we have to take accountability and not try to hold our partner or make our partner responsible for our childhood wounds. They'll bring them out, but it's not their responsibility to heal them. They can walk with you through the process. They can hold your hand. They can encourage. They can nurture. They can love on you in extremely meaningful ways. But a partner will never be able to heal your childhood wounds. So, how might an individual's family of origin, how might that shape what people expect marriage to be? Now, if you grew up in a household where your parents loved each other, you saw that how well that they were emotionally connected, they hugged, they kissed, they held hands, they would sit on the couch hugged up watching television, and there was evidence, there was demonstrable and visible evidence of the love that existed between them. You may expect to have that same thing in your marriage when you get married, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have it just because that's your expectation. But your family of origin can absolutely have an impact on what you expect your marriage to be. If you grew up in a household where there was all hell broke loose all the time, and your parents not only behaved as if they couldn't stand each other, they said it out loud sometimes that they couldn't stand one another. Maybe that's what you might end up expecting in a marriage. Sometimes we can expect what we experienced, or we can expect the opposite of what we experience. But our family of origin can definitely have an impact on the vision that we have of what we want our marriage to be. So we talked about resentment. Jackie brought that up a few minutes ago. When might grief turn into resentment? So grief often turns into resentment when the partner's pain, and especially emotional pain, is repeatedly ignored, or it's dismissed or minimized and left unaddressed. When that happens and happens and happens and happens, there's going to be some resentment that results from that. Because if your partner cares enough and is vulnerable enough to bring that concern to you, then I believe you owe it to your partner to listen and figure out together what you can do to address what your partner is experiencing in terms of grieving what they thought they'd have in this marriage. And you also have to wonder, well, how can you do that, Val? How can you honestly grieve without punishing your spouse for not being everything that you hoped for? First of all, listen, your partner may not know what you hope for in a partner before you got married. If you share that with them, great. But let's face it, most of us don't. We kind of keep that to ourselves and hope that this man or this woman will turn into the individual that we hope for as a husband or as a wife. But if you want to really honestly grieve it, first of all, you got to name the pain without any contempt, without blame, and without assassinating the character of your partner. There are ways to engage in those conversations. It might make it more challenging when resentment has begun to set in. Hey, Nene. It might make it challenging when resentment has begun to set in, but I believe it could still happen. Before you have a conversation with your spouse, have one with yourself and do what you need to do or what you can do to manage your emotions and get to a place where you can have this honest conversation without blaming and without shaming and without being hypercritical. Here's another key question. What's the difference between acceptance and settling? And, it's so ironic that I'm talking about this today. I actually had this very conversation with my own counselor yesterday. We were talking about acceptance. We didn't talk about it in the framework of acceptance versus settling. We talked about it in terms of just acceptance. And here's the thing, acceptance and settling, they may look similar on the outside, but internally they're very, very different. And I want to sit here for a few minutes and talk about this because I believe it's important to know the difference between acceptance and settling because when you are in a long-term relationship or a marriage that has not lived up to what you thought it would be, and if you share that with your friend, listen, the sister girl amen corner may ask, well, girl, why you settling for that? But maybe it's not selling. Maybe it's acceptance. So I want to spend a few minutes here talking about the difference between acceptance and settling. Acceptance is actually rooted in truth. Settling is kind of rooted in a sort of resignation. You're just resigning yourself to this. This is it, and that's all. Acceptance says, I'm willing to see this relationship clearly. I'm no longer pretending it's something that it's not. I can acknowledge both the strengths of this relationship as well as the limitations of the relationship. That's acceptance. This is what settling says. Settling says, this is probably all I'm ever going to get. So I might as well stop hoping. I might as well stop asking. And I might as well stop expecting anything to be different. So, can you hear the difference in tone and attitude in those two statements? Acceptance doesn't mean that you excuse neglect. Doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that you excuse emotional distance, betrayal, or disrespect, or repeated patterns of harm. Acceptance simply means telling the truth about what's present, what's missing, what has changed, and what needs to be grieved, as well as what might change going forward if, in fact, you take the time to have the appropriate conversations with your partner. And I say conversations plural because something like this, you're going to probably need more than one conversation. Healthy acceptance can have an impact of you feeling empowered because it helps you to stop fighting the reality. And now you can begin to use some discernment and some wisdom in terms of making decisions. It may sound something like this. Now, listen, this is not the marriage that I imagined, but I am willing to work with the marriage that we actually do have. That's acceptance. Settling, however, like I said, it carries some despair. And it might sound something like this. I no longer believe that my needs matter. My needs don't matter. I no longer believe my voice will be heard. I no longer believe change is possible. So I'll just stay, I'll hang around, I'll function, and I'll emotionally disconnect or disengage. That's not peace. That's survival. You're just barely hanging on by a thread. Um, you're surviving. You're not thriving. Acceptance still has a voice. Settling will silence your voice. Acceptance says, I love you, and I also need us to address what's not working. Settling says, there's no point in bringing this up anymore. I ain't even going to talk about it no more. Acceptance can hold gratitude and grief at the same time because we know that two things can be true at the same time. Settling just kind of buries itself in grief, under obligation, or maybe fear. As I said, you're just surviving. You're there, but emotionally, you're not really there. So here's the real difference. Acceptance, you see the truth, and from that truth, you'll choose wisely. Settling says, I see the truth, but I no longer believe that I have options or a voice or hope. Acceptance tells the truth with wisdom. Settling tells the truth with a high degree of hopelessness. So I think that it's possible to have a posture of acceptance in terms of, listen, this may not be the marriage that I wanted, but it's the one I got. Now, what can we do? How can we work together to make this better, to turn things around, to make it different? I see you, sis. What can we do? Because fighting against it or pretending it's not there or just burying your head in the sand, it will get you absolutely nowhere. So look at what you have and what can you work with. Now, again, it does require your partner to work with you. But if your partner is emotionally lazy and relationally lazy and has no interest in working with you to kind of turn things around, then you've got some choices to make. Just because you're in a long-term marriage, you could have been married 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. You are not without options because ideally both partners will work together. So if you are coming to your partner heart in hand to have a real, genuine conversation with them, and they have no interest. Listen, this is what we got. Or they might say, well, why are you complaining? I'm not as bad as Jimbo down the road. Yeah, but I'm not married to Jimbo. I'm married to you. And this is what I need from you. This is what I see that's not working for us. So now, how can we work together to address it? If your partner has no interest in that and they just blow you off repeatedly after every conversation that you come to them with, then I'll just say this: you are not without options and you have a choice to make because at that point, your partner is telling you they have no interest. They don't care. They're not trying to make things better. Now, it's one thing if they put forth their best, best, best effort, but they lack the capacity to kind of rise to what you would have expected of them. That's a different story entirely because I believe you got to give a brother or a sister credit for their try. Okay. If they are really putting forth, I mean, real effort, not saying, well, I want to do better or I'm gonna do better. Hey, Ham, that's very different if that's all that they do. But when you can really see that they are putting forth maximum effort, I believe a partner deserves credit for that, even if they don't hit the mark or if they don't hit the mark that you were hoping for. But if you can see that effort, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not Ham. I just saw Frank Chase. I'm sorry. That's my cookie man. Where did the 1084 come from? I don't even know. Frank Chase 1084. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, hey baby. So what should you do if your partner comes to you and they say this marriage is not what I thought it would be? First of all, if you're coming to your partner to say this marriage is not what I thought it would be, I think you owe them an explanation in terms of what you thought it would be. And after having shared that with them, what do you do? First thing you got to do is listen. Don't defend. Don't get defensive. Listen to your partner. Ask questions. Listen, I believe when one partner comes to another with a concern or something that is troubling them, the other partner, the one of the best things you could do is have a posture of curiosity. Be curious, ask questions. Well, what, babe, from your perspective, what hasn't been working? Is there something that's been emotionally painful for you? If so, what is it? Is it something that we used to have and no longer do that you miss? Is there something that you are still longing for? And ask what repair might look like for them. If you do that and you really listen to what your partner says, my God, as one of my sister friends say, my God today. That's one of her favorite sayings, my God today. You could work it out because that clearly indicates to your partner not only are you interested in what they have to say and making things better, but you're willing to put forth the effort and to do the work. And sometimes that's all your partner needs to hear. Well, not really, because they need to see some work too. They need to do more than just hear the words. I think I said last week that our words and our promises and our declarations should have feet, because we are more interested in what our partners do than what they say. Because anybody can say anything about anything at any time, anywhere, anyhow. So we're more interested in what you do than we are in what you say. So your words should have feet, should have some momentum, should have something behind it. There should be an energy behind your words. Otherwise, you're lying. I know you may not think you're lying because you could say, well, I had every intention. Well, listen, your partner cannot experience your intentions. Your partner experiences what you actually do. There was an old saying, I know it's old and some of y'all may know it and some may not. 'Cause my mama used to say, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Good intentions. It don't cut it. There's got to be some action behind the words. And if you're in that relationship where there's been these unmet expectations and your marriage has not turned out to be as you hoped it would be, What can you do? Can you rebuild after years and years and years of that? The short answer is yes, absolutely. But there are some requirements for that. First, there's got to be honesty, got to be accountability, got to have some emotional maturity, consistent change. I'm going to say it again, consistent change. And also, the one who's grieving, a willingness to grieve the old dream while co creating a new one with your partner. Because you may not get the marriage of your dreams or what you dreamed your marriage would be. But when you and your partner are working together with a high level of intentionality and care and concern and love, you absolutely can create a wonderful marriage that is mutually satisfying, that is mutually fulfilling for both partners, where each partner is getting their needs met. That is a sweetness when a couple can get there, where both partners' needs are being met and needs are addressed. They're not thrown out of the window or swept under the rug. That's a sweetness when you can experience that. If you are grieving the relationship or the marriage that you thought you'd have, how might that show up um, in your body or in your behavior? Sometimes it may show up as fatigue. It can absolutely show up as irritability, lack of desire. You're going to be cranky. You might you might be mean. You might give your partner the stank face or the stank eye. You may shut down emotionally. For some people, they may experience a level of anxiety because the level of anxiety can set in when you're thinking about, wow, I really expected when I got married that I was going to have this or this or this, or that marriage would be this or this or this. And realizing that it isn't, you could potentially experience some level of anxiety as a result of that. Definitely some sadness, might be a little bit of overfunctioning, and there could be some avoidance of your partner because of the sadness, because um, your marriage has not turned out to be what you hoped it would be, and you haven't taken the time to engage your partner in conversation to talk about it. So, here are some questions each spouse should ask themselves when the marriage is far from what you imagined. Here's some questions to ask. What are you grieving? First of all, what did you expect? Can you be honest about what you expected your marriage to be? Can you be honest about you had an expectation of what your marriage would look like, regardless of who you married? Because we get who we got. Listen, we don't get this person that we have dreamed about. Um, we get who we got. That's who we married. And who we married greatly determines the type of marriage that you are going to have. So, what did you expect? What have I never clearly communicated? Because maybe there are some unmet needs. Maybe your marriage isn't what or where you expected it to be because you haven't taken the time to have an honest conversation with your partner and clearly communicate your needs. Is there something that I've done to contribute to the distance that's between us? Is there something that I've done that has what's the word I'm looking for? Contributed to the marriage not being what I thought that it would be? What do I still desire? What is it? Do you know? Are you able to clearly communicate that to your partner in a healthy way. Okay. That makes all the difference in the world. It's one thing to go to your partner and say, listen, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, you'll never do the other. I don't know what's wrong with you. You ain't nothing like the husband I thought that I would have. I just don't get it. What is wrong? The hell is wrong with you? A partner more than likely is not going to respond very well to that particular approach. But what if you said, and you started with that gentle startup with your feelings? I'm feeling neglected in this relationship. There are some things that I really need and I'm longing for, and I want us to have a conversation about that to figure out what we can do about it. How can we work on this together? And the first step, you've got to have an honest, non accusatory conversation. I want to talk about what I miss. I want to talk about what I hope for. And I want to talk about what I still desire for us, not just for me. What do I still desire for us? Because you're not in that marriage by yourself. You got a partner, and their needs matter just as much as your own. And when both partners can be very intentional about really sinking in and working at meeting the needs of the other, everybody's needs get met. But if you have the attitudes, I'm not going to do this if you don't do that. And the other one says, well, I ain't going to do that if you don't do this. What happens? Nobody's needs get met. You're at a stalemate. But if both partners say, I want to meet the needs of my spouse, and the other one says, I want to meet the needs of my spouse, and I'm going to do everything within my power to meet those needs. Because, our spouse is not meant to meet every single need that we have. Let me just put that out there. Okay. We have need for outside friendships. We have need for other acquaintances. We have need for space and solitude. We have many needs that our partners cannot meet. But then there are those needs that only our partner should meet. And those are the ones that you really want to focus on. Because I know last week when we were talking, we were the cookie man was on with me last week, and we were talking about I think needs and love languages, and he was talking about how he might go out and shovel the snow and dig my car out. That don't do nothing for me. I'm gonna tell you. Is it great that he does it? Yeah, but that don't do nothing for me because I can hire somebody to do that. But the need that I have, that I only want to be met by him, is that quality time with him and that touch. Those are my love languages. Okay. And going out together and having fun together and enjoying each other's company. Those are the needs that I want to be met only by him. I can hire Johnny down the road to shovel my snow. I don't care nothing about that. And I think when partners can be very clear, first with themselves and then with the other, what those specific needs are. And I believe in being as specific as possible. If you say to your partner, well, I want more romance. What does that mean? Because what is romantic to me may not be romantic to the other person. So you need to be very specific. What does romance look like to you? Well, I want us to have fun. Okay. What does fun look like for you? What's fun? What's a fun outing? What's a fun event? Let's talk about it. What's fun for me? What's fun for you that we can do together? Now, y'all ain't always going to agree on what's fun, but you could still build fun into the relationship. I think that is a huge factor that is missing in a lot of relationships, and partners have fun with everybody else except their spouse. But when you can incorporate that high degree of fun and enjoying each other's company, that can even settle a lot of conflicts. I can avoid a lot of conflicts. So, what we talked about tonight is grieving the relationship that you thought you'd have. Many of us enter into a marriage with an idea of what we want marriage to be or what we hope our marriage will look like. And it doesn't always turn out that way because when we have these high ideals about what our marriage is going to look like, we typically envision it with the person we consider to be an ideal partner. That person don't always exist, and that's not going to be the one that you might marry. So you don't get you don't always get the person of your dreams. You get the one that you choose. Now, can you still have a dream filled marriage or relationship? Absolutely. But sometimes it requires that we manage those expectations that we had before we entered into that marriage. Okay? Because you probably ain't the ideal person that your partner envisioned either when they were thinking about what their marriage would look like. So it's not just about you grieving the relationship that you thought you'd have. Maybe your partner is grieving the relationship that they thought they'd have. So sit down, talk to your partner. Open, honest, transparent communication is the order of the day. Because just because you don't necessarily get the marriage that you would hope for, it can still be the marriage of your dreams. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me. So if you haven't already done so, I say this all the time. First of all, even if you have subscribed, hit the like button, hit the share button, and share it with somebody. But hit the like. If you haven't subscribed, I would appreciate very much as that you would subscribe. Thank you, sis. Sis said it was a great topic. Thank you, sis. I appreciate that. So, as we're closing on our conversation tonight, I want to remind you that grieving the relationship you thought you'd have does not automatically mean that your marriage is over. Sometimes grief is the doorway into the truth. Sometimes it is a place where denial ends and honest repair can begin. But you've got to honor that grief. You've got to be willing to have that conversation with your partner. All is not lost just because your marriage didn't turn out to be the way that you thought it would be. Thank you, baby. Thank you, E. Nicole. I appreciate you. Me and E. Nicole, we had a great Sunday brunch at Wilson's in Hynella, New Jersey. If y'all haven't been to Wilson's in Hynella, first of all, I didn't know there was such a place as Hynella, New Jersey, until I heard about Wilson's. But it's great atmosphere, great food, ambiance, great music. They have a lot of different events there. They have the Sunday brunch. They have events almost every night of the week. There's some different event going on. And no, I don't have no stock in Wilson's restaurant, but it's owned by a brother, him and his wife. And I want to support and I want to support our people as much as possible. So Wilson's restaurant in Hynella, New Jersey. If you haven't been there, go there. So next week may be Is Father's Day next weekend? I think so. Maybe the last live podcast of, until sometime in September, because I typically take off for the summer, take off July and August. I like to spend a lot of time with the grandbabies and hanging out with them and doing things and going to the pool and just enjoying the summer as much as possible. So next week might be the last one. There is a topic that I want to have before the end of the month, but I haven't settled on that just yet. So thank you again for being here tonight. I love you, and I'll see you next time.